A man walked into the Grand Meridian Hotel lobby, expecting a smooth check-in. What he didn't expect was to be met with disdain and condescending remarks from the very staff who were supposed to serve him. But what happened next would leave them shocked and change their lives forever. James Wilson had spent decades building his tech empire from scratch. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing companies in the country, he was used to people judging him by appearances. But today, he wasn't here for business meetings or networking. He was here for a weekend getaway, hoping to relax before an important board meeting. He approached the front desk, carrying a small leather bag. A young receptionist, whose name tag read Tiffany, glanced up at him and immediately gave a dismissive smirk. "Name?" she asked, her tone sharp and impatient, as if she already assumed he wasn't worth her time. "James Wilson," he said politely, his voice calm and even. Tiffany frowned. "I don't see a reservation under that name," she said, leaning back slightly, a hint of arrogance in her posture. "Are you sure you booked here?" James maintained his composure. "Yes, I booked through your website 2 weeks ago. It should be under the executive suite package." Tiffany rolled her eyes slightly, muttering under her breath, loud enough for James to hear. "Must be some rich guy who thinks he's better than everyone else." James's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. He had encountered rude staff before, but he rarely let it bother him. Today, however, he was determined not to let anyone treat him disrespectfully. "Could you double-check, please?" he asked calmly. A bellhop nearby, named Eric, overheard the exchange and smirked. "I think someone's getting impatient," he whispered to Tiffany, clearly enjoying the moment. James remained silent, waiting for Tiffany to find his reservation. Instead, she leaned over the counter, speaking in a condescending tone. "Look, sir, maybe you should try another hotel if you're going to complain about our system. Some of us actually have work to do here." At that moment, the hotel manager, a woman named Denise, walked past. She caught the tail end of the exchange and decided to intervene. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her tone authoritative. James looked up, polite but firm. "Yes, my reservation seems to be missing. I just want to check in." Denise glanced at Tiffany and Eric and let out a sharp sigh. "Really? Can't you two handle a simple check-in without attitude?" Tiffany shrugged, clearly annoyed that management had interrupted her. "He's being difficult," she said. James smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. He had learned long ago that people like Tiffany and Eric often misjudge situations based on appearances. He decided to wait a few more moments, letting them flounder a little. After a tense pause, Denise returned, frowning as she typed at the computer. It looks like there's a reservation here under James Wilson, Executive Suite, 2 nights." James nodded politely. "Thank you." But Tiffany and Eric weren't done. As James signed the check-in forms, Tiffany muttered, loud enough to be heard, "Probably doesn't even know how to handle money." Eric snickered behind her. That was the final straw. James straightened, his calm demeanor giving way to quiet authority. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low but firm. "You seem to be making a habit of judging guests before learning anything about them. I suggest you stop." Tiffany and Eric laughed nervously, assuming he was just another frustrated guest. Denise, however, noticed the intensity in James's tone and the authority in his presence. She paused, suddenly realizing that something about this man wasn't ordinary. James finished the check-in, took his key, and headed toward the elevators. But Denise decided to follow him briefly, curiosity getting the better of her. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking," she started cautiously, "are you visiting on business or personal matters?" James turned, offering a polite smile. "Personal, but my work occasionally follows me wherever I go. I'm the CEO of Wilson Technologies." Denise blinked, stunned. The name didn't immediately register, but she had a vague familiarity. James continued, "I usually avoid letting work interfere with my downtime, but I also expect professional treatment everywhere I go. That includes check-ins at hotels." Tiffany and Eric, overhearing this, froze. Recognition began to dawn as they processed his words. This wasn't just some random wealthy guest. They had insulted the CEO of a major company. James paused, letting the weight of the revelation sink in. "I've learned that assumptions about people can lead to disrespect," he said evenly, "and I also understand that actions have consequences." Denise's eyes widened. "Sir, are you saying?" James nodded slightly. "Yes, I will be speaking to your management about the incident. It's important that your staff understands the seriousness of their behavior, especially toward guests." Tiffany and Eric exchanged terrified glances. Their casual arrogance had just collided with a level of authority they hadn't anticipated. The gravity of their actions was finally clear. They had insulted the CEO of a company with thousands of employees and millions in revenue. James took the elevator up to his suite, leaving Denise and the staff to process the situation. She quickly contacted hotel headquarters, explaining the incident and the identity of the guest. Corporate headquarters immediately recognized the potential damage to both their reputation and employee conduct standards. By the time James reached his suite, he had already received confirmation from the hotel's corporate office that they would review the staff's conduct and implement corrective measures. But he wasn't done. Being someone who believed in accountability, James planned to ensure that the lesson reached those directly responsible. He settled into his suite, unpacked lightly, and began drafting an email to corporate HR and hotel management. He detailed the incident, highlighting the inappropriate behavior of Tiffany and Eric, and emphasized the importance of accountability and respect. His words were professional, precise, and fun-yielding, leaving no room for excuses. Within hours, the corporate office responded, acknowledging the complaint and agreeing to take immediate action. They promised disciplinary measures against the employees who had acted unprofessionally. James's calm, methodical approach ensured that the incident would not be brushed aside or ignored. By evening, Denise approached James again, this time with a more respectful demeanor. "Sir, I want to personally apologize for the behavior of my staff," she said. "It was unacceptable, and I assure you, action will be taken immediately." James smiled politely, appreciating her sincerity. "Thank you, Denise. I hope this will serve as a learning experience for everyone involved." Little did Tiffany and Eric know, the repercussions were already set in motion. Their casual arrogance and disrespect toward a guest who had appeared ordinary, but was, in fact, the highest authority in his company, would soon be their undoing. The next morning, James awoke early, as was his habit. He didn't want to leave anything to chance. Breakfast was scheduled in the hotel's dining room, and he decided to observe the staff discreetly. While he didn't intend to make a scene, he wanted to ensure that his previous experience wasn't repeated and that proper conduct was maintained. As he entered the dining area, he noticed Tiffany serving tables, her demeanor slightly more subdued, but still nervously twitchy. Eric was nearby, refilling drinks and attempting to keep a confident posture, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. James quietly observed, noting every detail: the way Tiffany approached each guest with hesitation, the way Eric flinched when a customer raised a question. It was clear they had internalized the embarrassment from the day before, but James wasn't there to humiliate them further. He wanted to gauge whether they could truly understand the consequences of their behavior. A couple at a nearby table asked Tiffany for extra napkins. She hesitated, then snapped, "Sure, I guess." Eric handed the drinks, but muttered under his breath about difficult guests. James could see that the pattern of disrespect lingered. It wasn't entirely eradicated. He decided it was time to intervene directly, without raising alarm. Approaching Tiffany quietly, he spoke in a calm but firm tone. "Tiffany, can I have a word?" She turned, startled, and nodded hesitantly. James led her to a quiet corner of the dining area where she couldn't be overheard. "Yesterday, you treated me and others with a lack of professionalism," he began. "It's important that you understand the impact of your actions. People judge based on experience, not assumptions. Acting arrogantly towards someone because you misjudge them is unacceptable in any role, especially in hospitality." Tiffany's eyes widened. She swallowed nervously. I understand, sir. I didn't mean. James held up a hand, letting her finish. Intentions don't erase the consequences. You need to reflect on how you treat guests, because it doesn't just affect me. It affects the reputation of this hotel and your own career. He gave her a brief pause, letting the words sink in. Tiffany's shoulders slumped, her arrogance replaced by genuine concern. I will. I promise, she whispered. James nodded and then turned his attention to Eric, who had been watching from across the room. Eric, the same applies to you. Arrogance and condescension are unacceptable. You must recognize the responsibilities of your position. Respect is not optional. Eric's confident facade cracked, replaced by a mix of fear and realization. Yes, sir, he muttered. Satisfied that the initial impact of his presence was understood, James returned to his table. But he didn't let it end there. This incident wasn't just about correcting behavior in the moment. It was about ensuring lasting accountability. After breakfast, he requested a private meeting with Denise, the hotel manager. She led him to her office, clearly nervous, and gestured for him to sit. Miss Turner, Denise, James began, clarifying his role to ensure full attention. The behavior of your staff yesterday was not just unprofessional, it was insulting. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again, not only for me, but for every guest who walks through these doors. Denise nodded, fidgeting slightly. I understand, sir. We'll take the necessary steps. James continued. I will be notifying corporate headquarters of the incident. You need to prepare a full report, including staff conduct, corrective measures, and a plan for training. Mistreatment of guests, especially based on assumptions, will not be tolerated. Denise scribbled notes furiously, realizing the seriousness of the situation. Yes, sir. We'll comply immediately. James leaned back, calm and composed. I also want to make it clear that this isn't a punishment for humiliation. It's about accountability. Everyone has to understand that actions have consequences. I expect follow-up on training, mentoring, and proper enforcement of policies. Over the next few hours, corporate HR contacted the hotel to review the reports. Tiffany and Eric were summoned for private sessions. As they waited, anxiety overtook them. They couldn't shake the realization that their arrogance had collided with the CEO of a major company, and that their actions could cost them their jobs. When the meeting began, HR addressed Tiffany and Eric directly, referencing the incident, the security footage, and the reports from guests. It's clear your behavior yesterday was unacceptable, the HR representative said. There's no excuse for insulting or mistreating a guest. The CEO who you were speaking to is now demanding accountability. Your employment is under review. Tiffany and Eric were pale, realizing the full weight of their actions. They hadn't just been rude. They had insulted someone with the authority to influence their careers and livelihoods directly. Meanwhile, James reviewed the hotel's policies from his suite, ensuring that training modules would be updated, staff would undergo conflict resolution courses, and any future incidents would be handled decisively. He wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in enforcing standards and preventing such arrogance from recurring. By the afternoon, corporate had concluded their investigation. Denise was called into a meeting with James and HR. Based on the incident, HR began. Both Tiffany and Eric will be terminated effective immediately. Their actions violated company policy and reflected poorly on the hotel. Training for all remaining staff will be intensified to prevent future incidents. Denise's jaw dropped, but she understood the rationale. The incident had escalated far beyond her initial expectations. Corporate was setting a precedent. No one could act arrogantly toward guests, regardless of assumptions or perceived authority. James observed quietly, making a note that every detail was properly documented. It's not about punishment, he said, his calm tone carrying weight. It's about ensuring respect and accountability. The staff must understand that privilege or position doesn't justify disrespect, and that arrogance carries consequences. Word quickly spread among hotel employees. Tiffany and Eric's termination became a cautionary tale. Other staff members realized that even minor condescension could have serious repercussions, especially when they misjudged someone based on appearances. By evening, James returned to his suite, satisfied that the immediate lesson had been delivered. He knew that beyond the firings, the hotel would now operate with a renewed sense of professionalism. Guests would be treated fairly, staff would understand the limits of authority, and the hotel's reputation would be preserved. The following morning, James decided to make one final visit to the lobby. It wasn't about confrontation. He wanted to witness firsthand the changes taking place. The hotel had already begun updating training protocols, and new staff meetings had been scheduled to address professionalism, respect, and guest service. Denise greeted him cautiously as he walked in. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for coming back. We've already begun implementing the measures you suggested." James nodded. "I appreciate that, Denise. I want to make sure this isn't just temporary. Staff need to understand that their behavior reflects the hotel, and they must uphold these standards consistently." He observed the remaining employees as they worked. Their demeanor was noticeably more professional, more attentive. Smiles were genuine, conversations were polite, and no hint of arrogance or condescension lingered. The contrast from the previous day was staggering. "Corporate has already addressed Tiffany and Eric's behavior," Denise said quietly. "They've been terminated, effective immediately." It was a difficult decision, but necessary. James acknowledged this with a slight nod. Actions have consequences. Sometimes they're uncomfortable, but that's how accountability works. At that moment, a guest approached the front desk, asking for assistance with luggage. The staff responded promptly and courteously. James watched as a new employee guided the guest to the elevator, carrying bags without a single complaint or smirk. Satisfied, James finally spoke to Denise directly. "I want you to lead a series of workshops this week on guest relations, focusing on respect and awareness. The goal isn't to instill fear, but to cultivate professionalism. Make sure staff understand that assumptions and judgments are dangerous, both for their careers and the hotel's reputation." Denise nodded vigorously. "Understood. We'll make sure every employee attends, and we'll use this incident as a learning experience." Later, James returned to his suite, reflecting on the events. He thought about Tiffany and Eric, their arrogance, their underestimation of someone they believed they could look down upon. Most people would never have the opportunity to learn such a profound lesson, but James believed in accountability, not revenge. They had been given consequences directly tied to their actions, and that was the most effective form of education. By mid-afternoon, the hotel lobby was calm and orderly. Staff moved with purpose, greeted guests politely, and handled inquiries efficiently. Word had spread that the CEO of a major company had been insulted, and corporate headquarters had acted decisively. Employees understood that disrespecting guests was a serious offense, and their approach now reflected that understanding. James decided to speak to a few staff members individually, offering guidance rather than criticism. He shared insights on leadership, professionalism, and the importance of humility, emphasizing that respect should be automatic, not conditional on assumptions about a guest's appearance or status. One young receptionist, Rachel, approached him nervously. "Mr. Wilson, I just wanted to thank you. I think I understand now how important it is to treat everyone properly. I'll make sure this never happens again." James smiled. That's exactly the point. Respect and professionalism aren't just words, they're actions. You'll carry this lesson forward not just here, but in every role you have in life. By the evening, James had completed his weekend getaway, having ensured that the staff had been held accountable, trained, and motivated to improve. He checked out with ease, the front desk staff now fully aware of the importance of their conduct, and the hotel operating smoothly without any trace of the arrogance he had encountered days before. As he walked through the lobby one last time, he noticed Denise watching him with a mix of relief and respect. "Thank you for ensuring that accountability was enforced," she said quietly. James nodded. "No problem. Remember, authority doesn't give you the right to disrespect. People learn that sooner or later, one way or another. When he returned home, James reflected on the events. The incident had been uncomfortable, even infuriating, but it had also been a reminder of why he valued professionalism and respect in every aspect of life. His approach had been firm but fair, ensuring that consequences were clear and lasting. Tiffany and Eric, meanwhile, faced the consequences of their behavior. They would now have to deal with the career ramifications, learning that arrogance and disrespect have real-world impacts. The hotel, through corporate action, had been forced to implement changes that would benefit future guests, ensuring that no one else would be subjected to such treatment. James's weekend had started with an unexpected confrontation, but it ended with resolution and justice. The hotel staff had learned a hard lesson. Accountability had been enforced, and professionalism had been restored. More importantly, James had reminded everyone involved that appearances can be deceiving, assumptions can be costly, and respect is non-negotiable. The story spread among hotel employees and neighboring properties. Staff discussed how even a single misjudgment could spiral into serious consequences. The hotel became known not just for luxury, but for professionalism, a direct result of one man's quiet insistence on accountability. By the time James left the city, Tiffany and Eric had been replaced, staff had undergone additional training, and the hotel was running smoother than ever. Guests would now receive the respect and service they deserved, and the lesson would remain with all employees for years to come. In the end, James had turned a moment of personal insult into an opportunity for meaningful change. The staff had been corrected, the hotel had improved, and the incident had become a clear reminder. Underestimating someone based on appearances, arrogance, or assumptions can have consequences far beyond what you imagine. And for Tiffany and Eric, it was a humbling, unforgettable lesson, one that would shape their future careers and ensure that respect for others became a non-negotiable standard in every interaction. The hotel stood restored, the staff more professional, and James Wilson had walked away, leaving a legacy of accountability, respect, and the undeniable truth: actions have consequences, and no one is above them.